Welcome back to the shop, guys. This week on the channel, we're gonna build some charcuterie boards for a restaurant called Chase's Place. It's located in Fredericksburg, Texas, and it's actually one of my personal favorite restaurants. They've commissioned some boards for us, so we're gonna get to that. Stick around to the end. I do have some Easter eggs coming up, and I'm Stoner Erickson from Erickson Design Company, and let's build something. Ta-da! Jumping right into it, we have this 4/4 hickory that we got from Dakota Hardwood here in Austin. Now we definitely want to use a hardwood on any kind of charcuterie or breadboard. A softwood will just nick and ding and scratch. So we're going to cut that down to 24 inches. We're just going to use a skill saw and a speed square to cut a straight line. I'll use a leaf blower to blow out all the sawdust from those offcuts. Now that the material has been broke down, I'm going to pick the top side, the best side, and I'm going to mark that in the right corner. Next, we're going to take some vinyl and we're going to cover the tops. So this is for when the CNC cuts down through it. It's going to help with fraying out, and if I was doing a 2-color carve, I would also paint through this system. I'm going to peel the vinyl back and slowly use a spatula and press it as hard as I can into the wood. Then I'm going to take a little piece of double-sided tape and I'm going to use that on each side. So I've got to do this to 10 of these. Now I slowly started running out of double-sided tape and vinyl, so what I did was I just used some blued painter's tape. This will work well, not as good as the vinyl, but it'll still work if you don't have the vinyl. And you can get this vinyl on Amazon, at Michael's, or Hobby Lobby. And I just started using smaller and smaller pieces of the double-sided tape to stretch it out. Next, I'm going to start by setting up my CNC machine. Now, these breadboards need to finish at 8 inches, and the hickory that I got finishes at 8 1/4, so there's a real small margin for error. So I'm going to lay that out on the CNC machine and do a test carve with pine, and then put a spacer in, or a block or a guide, so that the rest of the carves can follow that guide, and everything will be uniformed and the same. I'll use the touch plate and probe to get this thing started. So let's dive into Fredericksburg, Texas. It's in the heart of Central Texas. It was established in 1846 by German settlers, so it's kind of like an old German town. They have amazing bratwurst and kraut, wonderful shopping, amazing breweries, and my wife and I have been going there for about the past 10 years. We find these really awesome bed and breakfasts that are run by locals, and it's a great way for us to escape the city and find a little peace. Our test carve is complete, and I have such a small room for error here, you can see, but I'm glad that I did this because I really don't want to waste any of that sweet, precious hickory. I'm satisfied with the test carve, although Braden, the executive chef at Chase's Place, who is a master, world-renowned chef, had asked for something a little larger, so I'm going to reformat my design, and then I'm going to go ahead and carve 10 of these in a row. I'll get the carve going and I'll set up the front door on the X carve. This will keep the sound and the dust down, and then I'll go ahead and batch out 10 of these in a row. To keep a good workflow in the shop, as one carves, I'll take a freshly carved board and I'll actually take it to the table. I'll clean it up by taking off the tape and cutting off the tabs, and then doing a light sand. If you've made it this far in the video, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Chase's Place. The atmosphere will blow your mind. The cocktails are high-end, but affordable, and this Philly cheesesteak will break your heart. It's really high-end, but with a pocketbook for a woodworker. After the fiddle-fally of cutting the tabs with my knife, I just ran over the bandsaw with the next one, and this was easy. It just zipped it right off. It kind of helped my workflow a little faster. I actually had some minor dental surgery on this Saturday, so I'm getting a little long in the tooth, no pun intended. But I'm going to run over to the rigid oscillating sander and I'm going to sand off the edges and kind of start cleaning them up, getting ready for tomorrow. Back at it bright and early. I'm going to pull the last carve off and then I'm going to break the X carve stand down. Now I did a video on how I built this foldable stand, and since I'm not going to be using it the rest of the day, I'm just going to get it out of my way to make more room in the shop. Right back on the rigid oscillating sander, I have a 120 grit and I'm going to run through all 10 of the charcuterie boards and just make sure all the edges are cleaned up and nice and smooth. Over to my main workbench, you can actually see the sun as this passes come up from the right side. I'm going to take off all the tape and I'm going to kind of give the inside of the carve a nice sand. So sometimes when you're carving through this, and since we're adding epoxy to it, the little pieces of tape or vinyl will get trapped down in the carve, and when you put epoxy in there, it's really going to show through in the long run. So I've got to get all that cleaned up. Kind of tedious, but really important. Now that they're all cleaned up and up to Stoner's standards, we're going to move on to epoxy. I'm going to grab a couple sawhorses and a 2x10. Our driveway is actually really steep and I'm going to have to level the 2x10 to the sawhorses. The epoxy is so viscous, it'll find level. So I'll just take little pieces of wood and blocks and I'll make sure that it gets nice and level. I'm using a 2-part epoxy here. It's a hard, deep pour epoxy. I need this to be super strong. I need you to be able to cut on it. So I'm going to mix both parts, add a black coloring, and then I'm going to mix it for about 2.5 minutes. And then I'm going to wait and let all the bubbles come to the surface. This isn't going to alleviate all the bubbles, but it'll get rid of some of them. Then I'll slowly start going through, adding the epoxy and using a spatula and pulling it off. Now I'm going to plane these at the end, so I don't need it to be over top. Remember, if you like fun and creative videos like this, hit that subscribe button. Do it, and do it now. Making sure the epoxy is deep down in the carve, I'm going to shake really well. After shaking, I'm going to use a propane torch to pop all the air bubbles. Also, the heat from the propane torch will actually draw the rest of the air bubbles up and out, and I want this to be super crisp and super clear. I'm going to wait 24 hours for the epoxy to dry, so this is day 3. I'm going to use my planer and I'm going to plane off the epoxy and bring all of the boards down to 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to make slow passes so the epoxy doesn't chip out and I get a really crisp and clean finished product. So we're in the home stretch here. I'm going to use a 1/4 roundover bit from my benchtop router and I'm going to clean up and round over all 4 sides. This will give it a nice smooth to the touch and a really finished feel. And look. If you're not already following me on Instagram, I do previews to all these projects and it's a great way to stay in the loop. It's really important when I'm using this benchtop router to go at a really reasonable pace. If I go too slow, it'll burn the wood. If I go too fast, it'll chip it out. So there's definitely an ebb and flow to using that tool. The last few steps in this project are going to be to take it from a 120 hand sand up to a 320. Now this will make it super smooth. I'm also going to do a logo transfer, and I do want that 320 to really accept a heat transfer. You'll see here that I have my wedding ring on. If this was a softer wood, I couldn't have my ring on because it would scuff and scratch the wood. You need to use hardwoods when you're ever working with breadboards or charcuterie boards or something that's going to be washed or used or cut on. I have taken this beautiful hickory from rough lumber all the way to a finished charcuterie board. So it's important that people know who made it, for posterity maybe. But I'm going to take my logo in reverse, handcrafted by Erickson Design Company, use a wood burner, and transfer that logo to the back. Now, I made a video about that. Check out this card right here and you can see how I do that and the multiple ways to do that. And now for my final and favorite step, adding the butcher block conditioner. This is my favorite one that I use. It's not an oil, it's conditioner, and I'm going to actually condition it 3 times over the course of 72 hours, allowing that oil and conditioner to really get down deep into the grains and the fibers of wood. Keep in mind, this is going to be for a restaurant, so they're going to be washed and used every single night. So we don't want that oil to fade. Now there is some maintenance on these. About once every 2 weeks you want to re-wipe the conditioner on. And they came out absolutely gorgeous. I couldn't be more stoked. A special thanks to Chase's Place in Fredericksburg, Texas for this commission. What a fun build. These are gonna last a lifetime and the food they're gonna be able to serve on this is gonna be awesome. You know, their menu is in the description below. The food's great, the atmosphere is great, the service is great. If you're out in Fredericksburg, Texas or planning a trip to that small little town, hit them up because it is a really quaint, cool spot. And leave me a comment if you do. I would love to hear about your experience. Also, just leave me a comment in general. I want to hear what you think of these videos, and if you have a challenge for me to make something, I would love to hear that as well. Plus, don't forget to subscribe. Do it, and do it now. And check out my other videos right here. And I'm Stoner Erickson from Erickson Design Company, and we built something. Ta-da!